Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of The Rundown. I'm Sunny Galt. I'm a messenger with United Network News, and we are the news division of United Network. And we're also part of CARE. You're going to be hearing that name more and more. It stands for the Center for Amity and Restoration of Earth. And our mission is to bring you the real news. We do that each and every week. Lots of content is released throughout the week, and that includes our news updates. We've got local stories told through the eyes of our field messengers. We have in-depth news that the team and I work on for you guys that just goes a little bit more in-depth into some headlines that you might be seeing out there. We talk about the restoration of our planet and how we're creating a new Earth. And we also have updates from the Global Intelligence Agency, who knows exactly what's happening behind the scenes on this planet. Now, for a lot of us, you know something is off. You can tell it in our media. I watch a lot of different content online just to really gauge where humanity is at right now, or where Homo sapiens, I guess I should say, are at. That's for those of you who follow us and know what I'm saying when I say that, because there's actually a difference between the two. And, we're waking up. In fact, I think this weekend is actually a really big opportunity energetically for a lot of people to wake up. So I'm really excited about what's going to happen in the coming weeks. And really what we aim to do here at UNN is to be that soft place for people to land, people that are starting to ask questions about what's really going on, because you are not going to get the truth in mainstream media. And a lot of alternative media, even though people have good intentions, if they're getting intel from the outside, from some sort of source that is not the source, the creator of the universe, God, then it's tainted, right? And there's a lot of mixed messages, and it's just really confusing for people. And so our focus is really giving you straight information, real information, the truth of what's going on. And then you can do with it what you want. You want to believe it. You don't want to believe it. That's totally up to you. But we're trying to inform people who are starting to scratch their heads and go, this is a little off. And there's been a lot of stuff out there that's been off recently. Am I right? Okay, what you're listening to right now, this is our podcast, and it serves as a week in review for all of those stories. So it's a great way if you want to catch up on stories that you may have missed, if you want to share UNN with other people, because UNN right now is member-based. So when we release our content, it goes out to our members exclusively for the first week. And then after that, it is published on YouTube and Rumble, but we can't control what happens, if it stays up there, if it doesn't, right? We've got censorship and a lot of crazy things going on behind the scenes. So the best thing is to get the content through our app and through our website. In everything we put out there, in all of our stories, we encourage you guys to think critically and to ask questions. One of the things I'm hearing a lot of people say right now, which is so strange, because I've been saying this for like several months, and I think we should turn it into a hashtag, and that's question everything. Seriously, it's not even an understatement. Whenever you get information, you need to question it. You need to use your own discernment to determine if that information is accurate. And it's a crazy world out there, and that's really how you're going to know. I still see a lot of people on our app turning to people like Kim, who's the head of the GIA. You'll hear from her in just a little bit. Wanting to know questions, what's the story with this? What's the story with that? Understand, you can always tap into God, source, creator of our universe, for all of those questions. And I know some people are kind of rolling their eyes right now, but it's kind of this lost art form. It's more than an art form. It's just how we exist as spiritual beings. But we've kind of forgotten who we are. But we are meant to have that direct connection to God, to source. And that's what's being restored right now on our planet. But you can tap into that now. You don't have to go through Kim. You don't have to wait for the latest news update to come out. Tap into source yourself. And it may feel a little weird at first, but I'm encouraging you. It's like homework, guys. This is your homework. Start to tap into that, because that is open 24/7. And you're going to need that. We're all going to need to have that special relationship with source moving forward. So why not start it now? And then when you figure stuff out, share it with other people. I'm so encouraged online because I feel like more and more people are starting, whether it's a podcast or, YouTube channel, and they're just sharing their thoughts. And I love that. Yeah, that's really what our Field Messenger program is about. I'll tell you about that in just a second. But giving us your perspective on what's going on in the world. And once we do that, I think the world is going to seem like a much smaller place. It's like we got to get to know each other again, right? And you guys are all a huge, huge part of that. At UNN, we say we are changing the face of news because we believe you are the news. You are who you've been waiting for. And like I said, when you find that information, when you discover something, then why not share it with other people? Okay, so let's get started. Let's talk about the stories this week. Here are the rundown of stories you may have missed this week on UNN. Let's talk about our incredible field messengers because, again, this is how we're going to change the news. If you're tired of fake news, make news. We actually have a meme that says that. And it doesn't mean go out there and create, news that doesn't exist. It means share the news from your perspective of what's going on in your area. So let's talk about some of those stories. You guys submitted some great stories that were released this week. We'll kick things off with Emma out of Spain, and she takes us to a biological station in Fuerteventura, Spain, that rescues and rehabilitates sea turtles. I think they do a lot of really cool things, but Emma really focused on these sea turtles, and they help these turtles recover from injuries, and then they return them to the ocean, and they're doing incredible work. It looked like, there wasn't a lot of sea turtles. I think they do this on an individual basis, but the turtles will stay with them for weeks. And there was this one turtle in the story that they were trying to track because they can get a lot of information about where the turtle goes and their habits and things like that. So sometimes they put tracking devices on these turtles, just trying to get to know our marine friends a little bit more. And it's nice to see that people really care about the animals in our oceans. Amy out of New Jersey introduces us to, let's see if I can get this pronunciation right, pisanki eggs. So this is Ukrainian folk art. It's part of an event that was taking place in her area in New Jersey. And they designed these really special, very intricate designs on eggs. And they use wax with colored dyes. And she shows us the whole process. So she actually designed an egg. They kind of remind me of the Fabergé eggs, but maybe not as fancy. There's not like a bunch of gems and stuff like that on it, but it's more about the artistic design of the person who's working on the egg, but very beautiful. Monica out of Romania takes us to the Danube Delta Reserve. And this is connected to the Latia Forest, which is a subtropical paradise in the Danube Delta. It's got rich history, an amazing ecosystem. In fact, Monica says there are 550 species of plants and animals, which makes it a very popular place for researchers. They even have some really amazing wild horses, which you get to see if you check out the video as well. All right, Jerry out of Australia raises some questions about a building in his area, which is in New South Wales. It is a local council building, but here's the weird thing. It is up for sale, but locals are puzzled because they are only trying to get a third of the cost that it took to actually build it. Now, according to Jerry, there's nothing wrong with the building. There's nothing wrong structurally. So why would you just try to get a third of the cost? We don't really know exactly what's going on with this, but these are the questions that we have to start asking. Why would someone only accept a third of the price, right? You would probably, especially this day and age, you'd want to get as much money as possible. Is it because they see something coming in the future and they're just trying to get whatever they can? I mean, we're going to talk about governments in just a bit. Who knows? But it's good to raise these kind of questions and kind of scratch your head when this stuff happens. Atsuko out of Japan introduces us to a special dance called the Gujo dance, and it takes place in Japan. It's a 300-year-old tradition that began in the Edo period, and the whole idea was to unite people after a peasant uprising. And this uprising, as I understand it, was over a rise in taxes, and the people fought back. So there's definitely a story there to share, right? I kind of feel like we're going through this again, and we know history likes to repeat itself. Probably won't have very much more of that, if any, but that's our history of our world, right? Anyways, Atsuko shows us this whole festival that's built around all-night dancing to honor the past. And she says there's 10 different dances that people do. Kind of reminded me a little bit of line dancing, obviously different music, but everyone is dancing in sync with each other. And there were people of all ages. It just looked like a really fun time that they were having. Barun out of India, so that's his name. He takes us to Darjeeling, India, and he said he grew up in this area of India. It's known for its tea gardens and views of Mount Kanchenjunga. And so, again, this was a place that he grew up in. It seems like a very magical place. This is one of those, stories you really got to watch the video. But the views are incredible. You're high up there in the mountains. The plants look incredible. You feel like you're close to heaven. He did say that over the years, there's been urbanization and some things have impacted the area, but it still is quite stunning. Stephanie and Daniel out of Minnesota, which is a state in the United States, tells us more about agrarianism. It is a philosophy, and it's centered on family and community where property, food, and education are shared. Stephanie and Daniel are a great example of this. They show us exactly how it works. They actually have their own farm where they're able to grow 80% of their own food, which my mind was just kind of blown when I heard that. Anytime I try to grow something, I always think about, what if I had to grow everything myself? How would I possibly make that work? And of course, they do focus on regenerative farming, which we've talked a lot about on the news in the past, which really just works collectively with nature to have amazing food, produce, fruits, and also how the animals on the land give back to the land. And it's really all one big cycle, and it works quite well when it's left alone to do what it was intended to do, right? Tony out of Italy shows us the benefits of laughter yoga, which looks as fun as it sounds. She says laughter boosts immunity, it lowers blood pressure, it lifts your mood, of course, and she is a laughter yoga instructor. I'm telling you what, if you did this all day long, I don't know how you could possibly be in a bad mood, right? And so it looked like she and her friends were having a lot of fun, and she encourages us to try it as well. And finally, Michael out of Sweden takes us to the annual Harvest Festival. It's been going on since 1997, and it takes place on a small island off of Sweden's coast. It's a 3-day festival. He says they get 200,000 visitors every year, including himself and his family. And he just shows us around, right? There's amazing vegetables, different types of produce, local delicacies, incredible artwork, and bowls that people have made. And it looks like a good time was had by all. And here are some of the stories the team and I worked on for you guys this week. These are more of our in-depth stories where we tell you a little bit more about what's going on behind the scenes. And we're going to kick things off with medical waste. Have you ever stopped to think about this? Because it's a little bit scary. It is piling up faster than ever in hospitals and clinics, from used gloves and syringes to unopened supplies discarded due to strict protocols or expiration dates.
So I wanted to flag something with hospitals. Anything that all the supplies that they bring to your room, so they pack your drawers with things that they might need, like, syringes or pre-filled syringes of sodium chloride. All of these things, like feeding bags, they want to stock up your room with what you need. However, if you leave the room or if you're transferred to another room, if you don't take any of that stuff with you, all of that stuff gets thrown out. It's considered contaminated and they will not be able to reuse it. So what nurses have to do is, if I have no need for it or if I don't take it home, they all get thrown out.
In the U.S. alone, healthcare providers generate more than 3 million tons annually, fueling a multi-billion-dollar disposal industry. Globally, about 1 in 3 facilities isn't safely handling this waste, and traditional methods like incineration have caused serious environmental harm. New technologies such as autoclaving and ozone sterilization offer cleaner alternatives, but local communities often resist nearby disposal sites due to pollution concerns. While the problem may seem overwhelming, supporting sustainable practices, donating unused supplies, and advocating for cleaner policies can help reduce healthcare's environmental impact. Egypt is cracking down on TikTok creators, arresting teens for allegedly posting what they call indecent content and targeting their income, travel, and devices. Authorities claim violations of public morals and misuse of social media, though human rights groups say the cybercrime law is often used to suppress free expression.
Why is a 19-year-old Egyptian TikTok star in jail? Mariam Ayman, popularly known as Susie El Ordonia, is one of dozens of teenage TikTokers who have been arrested by Egyptian police. Ayman went viral a few years ago and has captivated her audience of over 9.4 million users with videos of her everyday life, from photo shoots with her boyfriend to clips of her sister who has an intellectual disability. Now, she faces charges of distributing indecent content and laundering 15 million Egyptian pounds, or roughly $470,000. This came after a podcast interview where she said if she had 10 million Egyptian pounds, she would spend half of it to move her family to a better home. Ayman's fleeting remark was interpreted to violate Egypt's 2018 cybercrime law, which criminalizes any content that infringes on the principles or family values in Egyptian society.
Even while some creators are detained, their accounts remain active, highlighting the precarious position of those sharing comedy, lip syncs, or daily life content. Past crackdowns on young women for dancing and lip syncing are repeating, with vague rules and little clarity on what constitutes harm. TikTok has reportedly agreed to align content with Egypt's laws and cultural norms, but the situation underscores a broader tension between digital freedoms, government control, and economic opportunity for creators. Funerals in South Africa are culturally significant but increasingly unaffordable, with rising costs driven by traditions, inflation, service fees, and scarce burial plots in major cities. The shortage of graves has fueled inequality, corruption, and the growth of expensive private burial markets, forcing families into financial strain. Compounding the problem, some funeral homes sell unlicensed insurance plans, leaving families at risk of unpaid claims, while many overpay for coverage without realizing cheaper, legitimate options exist, like this one.
So you take out these expensive policies that charge high premiums month after month, even when you are in good health. And unfortunately, some advisors push these funeral policies because they are easy to sell and require no medical questions. But here's the truth they don't always tell you. If you are in reasonably good health, you can qualify for something that is called an immediate expense benefit or final expense benefit, which is an underwritten benefit, meaning you may be required to go for a medical checkup. This benefit pays out within 48 hours, just like a funeral cover, after death, and it covers from $50,000 to $150,000 to cover funeral expenses. And here's the thing, it can be 40 to 80% cheaper than funeral covers.
Regulators are now tightening rules to crack down on fraud, improve transparency, and ensure families can access funds when they need them the most. Singapore is confronting a new vaping crisis as drug-laced vapes, which are known as K-pods, containing the anesthetic etomidate, have raised serious health and safety concerns. Inhaling these tainted vapes can cause drowsiness, confusion, poor coordination, aggression, and even suicidal thoughts, with effects difficult to detect without lab tests. In response, harsher penalties for vaping took effect on September 1st, including criminal and immigration consequences, while public awareness campaigns, school programs, and border controls aim to curb usage.
The penalties for vaping are getting tougher: prosecution, fines, and rehab. And if you're a student, a public servant, or in uniformed services, you risk losing your place altogether. If your vape has etomidate, the punishments are worse. First-time etomidate abusers face a fine and rehab. Found vaping again, you'll be arrested, investigated, and slapped with 6 months of mandatory supervision and drug tests. A third offense or more, you'll be detained for treatment and rehab and undergo drug testing later. Sell or distribute etomidate, and you could be looking at jail time and caning. Smuggle it in, and the penalties go up.
Etomidate is temporarily classified as a Class C drug, and authorities plan permanent legislation by early 2026 to tackle drug-laced vapes and protect public health. Retail violence is rising, particularly across Australia, with incidents ranging from verbal abuse and shoplifting to physical assaults on staff, costing businesses nearly $7.8 billion in 2024, while measures like bag checks, security gates, body cams, and tactical guards aim to prevent theft and protect employees. They can spark tension, privacy concerns, and even increase customer aggression.
These security gates are being used in some Coles and Woolworths stores to prevent theft. There are sensors tracking your every move from the self-checkout to the exit. But some say this makes them feel more like suspects than shoppers.
A lot of the Western Sydney ones do have those gates, and I just think it's a bit weird personally.
You know, I mean, I kind of understand that, but then on the same token, they're big companies, so they could probably let the odd box of ramen go for free, right?
Of course, workers are also facing real risks, including assaults and threats with weapons, highlighting a growing safety crisis. Experts and unions stress the need for a balanced approach that safeguards both staff and shoppers without creating unnecessary conflict or fear. Publishers are facing a growing threat from Google's AI summaries. Have you tried these before? Have you seen them? These provide instant answers that keep users from clicking through to the original websites. And it's a phenomenon that has been dubbed Google Zero. Zero as in you don't have to go to any other sites. Major news sites like CNN, Business Insider, and HuffPost have seen traffic drop 30 to 40%, with users half as likely to visit linked articles after seeing these AI summaries. Smaller sites are hit even harder, forced to either participate in AI overviews, which is what Google calls their program, or risk disappearing from search results.
For the first time ever, there are more zero-click searches on Google than searches with organic clicks and ad clicks combined. This means more than 50% of all people who query Google do not end up clicking away from Google. Google just ends up answering their question right there. This means that user that would have otherwise gone to your site is not going to your site anymore.
Although AI summaries offer convenience for users, they can strip away content, depth, and nuance, leaving publishers undervalued and readers missing the full story, which may be what they want, highlighting the need to balance speed with engagement and support for original content. Cyber attacks on cargo ships are a growing global threat, exploiting vulnerabilities in GPS, navigation, and automated systems to reroute shipments, disable fleets, or demand ransoms averaging $3.2 million. Incidents have surged from 10, although that still is a lot, in 2021 to 64 in 2022, so just a year later, with response costs doubling. Yet only 1 in 6 ship owners fully understand what a cyber-secure vessel entails. Risks like GPS spoofing and jamming have already caused ships to run aground, while ports are also vulnerable, threatening global supply chains and jobs.
The shipping industry is facing a sharp rise in cyber attacks as geopolitical disputes prompt state-linked hackers to target trade flows. Recent state-linked attacks have underlined how conflicts in Ukraine to the Middle East have destabilized globalization via disruptions in shipping, which delivers over 80% of internationally traded goods.
The maritime industry is responding with emerging technologies, stricter cybersecurity practices, and updated International Maritime Organization guidelines to help vessels and ports better defend against these evolving digital threats. Remote work continues to reshape how people and companies approach productivity and work-life balance, offering benefits like improved sleep, more family time, healthier habits, and up to 47% higher productivity. Now, despite this, many organizations are pushing for full-time office returns, often driven by culture or politics rather than data, sparking frustration and resistance among employees.
You know how every single company wants RTO now? And they were saying it was for better collaboration, productivity, innovation, all those buzzwords? Well, it turns out everyone is just admitting it was a lie to lay people off. And as more companies are realizing that, it's just a whole lot cheaper to not pay people severance and to make their job really annoying to the point where they want to quit. I call it the great RTO flip-flop. Because at first, companies were like, wow, this is amazing. Productivity is so much higher. And then all of a sudden, studies were saying, oh, productivity might not be as high. People are using mouse movers. Then all of a sudden, they want you to come back into the office if you want. It's just optional for now. Now it's just a couple days a week. And now it's 5 days a week, mandatory.
Studies show strict return to office mandates can backfire, with more than half of remote-capable workers considering new jobs, higher turnover rates, and employees willing to take pay cuts to maintain their flexibility. Companies that embrace remote and hybrid options not only retain talent, but also foster loyalty, better morale, and a healthier, more productive workforce. Golf carts are increasingly appearing on U.S. streets, evolving from leisure vehicles into street-legal, low-speed vehicles. They're called LSVs, equipped with headlights, turn signals, mirrors, seatbelts, and license plates. Allowed on roads with speeds of 25 to 35 miles per hour, they offer a convenient, eco-friendly, and affordable option for short trips, errands, and shuttling kids, with sales in the U.S. reaching more than $200,000 annually, and the global market expected to nearly double by 2034.
I'm out running errands, and nowadays in my area, remember I live in Texas, but it's very common to see people driving up to grocery stores, shopping centers in golf carts. And I've seen this with adults in the front and then kids on the back. As you know, those golf carts have those seats that are turned backwards in the back. And I'm just trying to figure out, when did that become normal? And when did it become legal? Or is it legal? Now, my thought about that is it's so unsafe. First of all, I don't think any of them, when I see them, I don't think they're in seatbelts. But the fact that you have all your little kids sitting on the back of a golf cart, you don't have any doors, there's nothing really to protect you at all if you were to be hit by a car.
While insurance and safety features are essential, their slower pace of these golf carts can create traffic challenges, prompting some communities to implement designated lanes, restricted routes, or time-of-day rules. Overall, street-legal golf carts are booming as practical, small-scale transportation. Just make sure you follow local regulations to stay safe. Now it's time for some updates from the Global Intelligence Agency. Kimberly Gogan is the head of the GIA, and she provides us updates throughout the week. Sometimes it's via a text that's sent out to our Telegram group. By the way, if you're not part of that group, I believe you can search for CARE. It might be on our website as well. If you go to unitednetwork.earth, I think we've got some links to our Telegram groups. But we always put out the latest information. Sometimes, like I said, she'll send out a little text message to the group. Sometimes it's a complete video. Who knows what it will be in the future? We actually have a meeting, the news team. We have got a meeting coming up on Tuesday, I believe, to talk about how the format of the news is probably going to change again, considering all of the stuff that's happening in our society. So we've got to evolve with it to bring you guys the latest and greatest, right? So on Monday, Kim released a text through the Telegram group, and I'll go ahead and read that to you. It says, "It's a full moon, and the secret space program operatives from the ACIO are in full force. With no war money coming from the war machine, they are scrambling. It's going to be another long night, so I will update all of you on Wednesday." Okay, so let's fast forward to Wednesday. She put out a video, and the first soundbite that I want to play is addressing something that's in mainstream media now that a lot of people are concerned about, and that is President Trump claiming that he can enact the Insurrection Act. So where is all of this coming from? Because the average person, if you're not being swayed by political opinion, and you look at everyday people, this is why, by the way, our field messenger program is so important, because the media, or in this case, politicians, will claim things like, oh my gosh, Portland's falling apart and Chicago's a mess. Now, Chicago is a little bit different of a story because that has had a lot of problems in the past. But it doesn't mean it requires the Insurrection Act. I encourage you guys to all go look that up and what the Insurrection Act actually claims and what it does, right? And when can that be enacted, right? When can you act on that? So there have been a lot of videos posted online of people in Portland specifically going, listen, this is not what's going on here. So why is Trump even bringing up the Insurrection Act? And why is he trying to get, whether it's the National Guard from various states? I know he tried to, and I believe it was successful, get the National Guard from where I'm at in California to go to a different state. I don't even know how that works. So why is he doing all of this? If it's not really a situation where there's truly an insurrection, why would he try to enact this? And Kim's going to tell us a little bit more about the reasoning behind that and some other things that are going on behind the scenes.
Okay, so Trump hints at declaring the Insurrection Act, claiming that Chicago and Portland are at unrest here in the United States. Now, we did reach out to some folks in Portland and reached out also to some folks in Chicago, and that really doesn't appear to be the case. From what we're hearing, there are some peaceful protests going on. There's a little bit of, but not much and not enough to declare the Insurrection Act. Now, he's wanting to move U.S. troops into these two areas. He'd like to, if they had their way, would be moving by this weekend troops into every U.S. state, actually. He would like to move them in on a federal level, which they would report to the White House. The truth behind this is that, well, they would like to have a world war. And they plan on starting that on Friday, from what I understand, because there's a whole lot of chatter going on behind the scenes, such as not only are they planning on moving U.S. troops in on U.S. citizens throughout the country here, there is also talk behind the scenes of another war starting in Gaza. They claimed as of yesterday that the ceasefire was not going to hold and that there was going to be another war. However, about 30 minutes ago or so, they're now starting to say, well, Hamas has agreed to our terms and we're going to do an exchange of prisoners. And aren't I the greatest president, says Trump, of Gaza Strip? So they allege that the negotiations have been going on with Kushner and Tony Blair. And, well, that's not what we're hearing behind the scenes, because for the last several days, they have been hunting for weapons from all of the groups that I call the war dogs. These are the guys around the world and women that sell arms in preparation or in the event of a war. So they are definitely trying everything they can to get weapons for free. With big promises of payouts on Friday, and people just aren't buying it. They've already supported them through the last Gaza war a couple years ago, and they don't want to support and can't afford to support another war for free. So they have all been promised that there are going to be big payouts and contracts going out as I guess, as soon as Friday and definitely over the weekend. And this is what everybody is expecting. As far as our folks that were planning on potentially doing something different, they have continued their conversations with the cowboy, I should say, so to speak, and they're getting quite an education still, but they are also unwilling to move ahead with in any other direction until after Friday. Now, this time of year, the harvest moon, the one that just passed on Monday, would have normally been the end of the family meetings. What that means is every year, the families of the Order of the Dragon and the Order of the Black Sun get together and they talk for about 2 weeks as they get orders from somewhere else. Normally, that would result in payment for those orders, which would have arrived on Monday. Now, no payment came. Everything was in an upheaval for a while, and they said, don't worry, just wait until Friday. Now, Friday happens to be 10/10, 10/10/2025. So they love their double numbers, 11/11. You know, these are all big days in their world of black magic for whatever reason. Maybe there's some kind of an alignment that happens on those days, and I don't even know if they know why they like those days, but that's part of the reason why they chose Friday as the date for the payout. It wasn't just kind of haphazard. They are expecting money to come on this day because it's 10/10. Really no other reason. You know, maybe that's there's an alignment with Uranus or something on that day. I have no idea. But they're definitely have pushed everybody to 10/10. So what's happening now, based on this is definitely going to happen on this day, that's what they're telling everybody, is that they are all gathering now in various locations where they would normally gather to get all of these contracts. They've already started arriving here in Durango. I know that for sure as of today. And they are going to continue to arrive throughout the weekend as everybody awaits their contracts. You know, I can tell you guys, you might as well save your airfare money because, you know, or your flight on a military helicopter, because you'll be sadly disappointed this weekend again.
Yeah, so as I'm recording this, it's Saturday, October 11th, and we'll see if light has dawned on Marblehead, as we like to say here in the U.S. Have they finally realized that no money is coming? These people keep doing the same thing over and over, you know, expecting a different result. So I'm not expecting anything out of them, but it's like, okay, what date are you going to wait for next? And how long are you going to wait? It's just silly, right? But I want to go back and talk a little bit more about this Insurrection Act and why Trump is claiming the Insurrection Act or threatening to claim it. So we're going to get a little bit of a history lesson. This is nothing you ever heard in school. You may have heard the name Genghis Khan before and the Mongols, but how does this relate to the deep state? And how in the world does this relate to what Trump is doing right now? Believe it or not, it's all connected.
So we know from our history, Genghis Khan was a Mongol, and Genghis Khan set on his conquest to conquer the entire planet. And according to our history books, you could say that he was fairly successful in conquering a good portion of Asia, you know, Japan, most of Eastern Europe, and then into the Byzantine Empire, which was the former Roman Empire, that he had conquered a number of kingdoms and was in control of a significant portion of the landmass of Earth. We also know that there are stories about him bearing the Golden Fleece. And I can say that it wasn't exactly gold, it was black gold, which meant that he had the protection of what we would call anti-source or anti-God, or the opposite side of source. And that is how, with a whole lot of help, he conquered the empires. Now, the army of the Mongols was one of the most brutal armies known here on this planet. Now, in our history, it also says that Genghis Khan conquered empires as well by having many, 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 many children. History shows us that Genghis Khan is probably related to a lot of people walking on this planet, and I would say, in part, that is true. However, Genghis Khan also had his own royal family and his own royal bloodline. And if you've ever traveled to Eastern Europe or parts of Asia, a lot of the families, meaning the families of the Illuminati or the elite, will tell you they're a relative of Genghis Khan. And you could say that's true. Definitely true. A lot of the descendants of royal families throughout the world are also related to Genghis Khan in one way or another, because Genghis Khan was not a normal person. Genghis Khan was an Abraxas. And Genghis Khan set out on a mission. Matter of fact, he was the general, one of the head generals for the Abraxas. The Abraxas Empire, in case you don't know who they are, and you've seen little glimpses of them in movies like the Jupiter Ascending. But the Abraxas were the royal humans descendant from the other side, meaning the dark side of the omniverse. The Abraxas had many empires, Earth being their most prized possession, of which they were the royal family. So Genghis Khan, being a general for the Abraxas, at a time when humanity was starting to break free, was sent here specifically to conquer Earth or reconquer Earth or get us all back in line. His intention was to make sure that the veil was secure. And if you don't know what the veil is, you might have heard about it in the alternative media. But the veil on this planet was not only a veil over the entire planet, it was a veil over the Abraxas Empire in which they could fully control us. Humans also, or Homo sapiens also had a veil as well, to which they could control us with as their cattle. They also participated in not only the red area, you could say they were also part of both the black and white areas from the other side, false light, that is. And anytime their cattle, started to get out of line, they would put us back in line by sending in the Mongols. And there's always a Mongol presence, here, or has been in the past on Earth, to where that army would rise up and attempt to regain full control over the empire, at least the one here on Earth, should we ever fall out of line. Now, this army also fought wars in other places as well. One of the main places that they would fight would be between the 5th and 6th densities. And the 5th and 6th density, between the 5th and 6th density, and sometimes in some cases between the 4th and the 5th, would become a permanent war zone. And it was a permanent war zone. You see, they've been fighting this war for a very long time. And they do look just like Mongols. I mean, they are brutal. And they are probably one of the most brutal groups I've ever run across. The war that has been going on for a very, very, very long time, in a time outside of time, was mainly for control of anything that could come into the materium, meaning anything that would pass through the causal plane and into the materium worlds, Now, every density has a causal plane, so it's not just us here in the fourth and third densities. So it was the war to control anything and everything of the materium, to prevent Source and God from actually creating things without their approval. You see, at one point in time, they believed that the entire empire of the other side of the omniverse should control fully this side of the omniverse. And you could say, in part, during the Dark Ages, that would have been true. So this war was continuously fought until recently. But the war never, ever, ever stopped. It started at the dawn of time, the dawn of mankind, the dawn of the human, and continued. The war, as far as it occurring in the reality of Source, ended with the fact that the universe was split and divided. And there was a definite line of separation, a red line, if you will, of separation between our side and their side. And there were rules of the road as to who could come and who could go and how many of us would be over there and how many of them would be over here. There were a lot of other rules of the road so that we did not have a full-on war actually in creation. So these people were in a space outside of time, continuously warring against each other, and that's where they stayed. However, at times of a great awakening of the Homo sapiens and risk of losing the empire on this side, in would march the Mongols. They always in the past have managed to secure the empire. And I'm telling you this story now because it's important as to what's happening with the crazy deep state people. So that being said, they were expecting their arrival several times over the last several weeks because they've always come. It's always happened. They've always gotten help. Now, who exactly are they helping? Obviously not us. But interestingly enough, there is definitely still on this planet a royal bloodline of this army we call the Secret Space Program. So what is the plan? This is what I'm hearing from operatives everywhere. What is the plan? Well, their plan is that this army, which doesn't exist anymore, in a place outside of time, which also doesn't exist anymore, is going to be here any minute. Most importantly, they definitely believe they are going to come on the full harvest moon. Now, we are officially on the second day after the full harvest moon, which would bring us to the third day, which is tomorrow, because remember, full moons are 3 days before and 3 days after. So they're definitely expecting this to happen within the next couple of days. They're going to be disappointed again, and then this is going to trickle down. So it's going to cause kind of an effect. But they're planning on, the deep state people that are giving you these dates are planning on this full-on war to regain control of the empire to start any day now. This is the reason for the alleged attempted declaration of the Insurrection Act so that we can put military personnel all over this country. It is also the reason for them talking behind the scenes that they are going to restart the Gaza war. It's the reason why they're calling all the war dogs and the military-industrial complex, not only in the U.S., but also in every other country in the world, to prepare their bloodline family for the war to regain control of planet Earth.
Yawn, 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 right? I mean, are we talking about bloodlines again? Seriously? But that is what the deep state does. And that was the last update we had from Kim. So that was on Wednesday. She said she might get a report out over the weekend, so if you're a member, stay tuned for that. That might happen. She might just update us again on Monday. Like I said, they were promised a bunch of stuff, and it's already past time that they should have received everything, and I'm sure nothing happened, so what are they going to do now? We shall see. All right, guys, thanks for hanging out with me tonight. If you want more information about United Network and what we do, or if you're interested in becoming a field messenger, go to our website at unitednetwork.earth. That's also where you can sign up to become a member and get instant access to all of the content we put out throughout the week. All right, this is The Rundown, and I'm Sunny Galt for United Network News, signing off.